Imagine a brutal knockout.
As desperate as it is, but falling ever further behind them. Oh no! That's what we...
But it wasn't some tin can separated from consciousness. Instead, a lapse in concentration would cost one of Britain's most talented boxers dearly.
Why would I fight someone I can't hit?
A man so hard to hit, Eubank Sr, Nigel Benn, and possibly even the great Marvin Hagler avoided him like the plague. Yet Herol's story goes deeper. From the cusp of greatness to cruel twists of fate, here is the tragic tale of Britain's forgotten pugilist. Please leave a like for Herol Bomber Graham and the algorithm. In the early 1980s, British boxing was stagnant. World champions were few, with only Jim Watt and Maurice Hope having more than several title defences. Global boxing had evolved, with countries like America, Mexico and Japan fashioning new yet effective styles. But Britain hadn't adapted, being still wedded to an upright, high guard technique from years prior. Though boxers like Kirkland Lang had experimented with the flashy hands-down approach, many were still cynical. So here's where Herol Graham and the Engle gym come in. Born on the 13th of September 1959, Herol was raised by Jamaican parents in Nottingham. At just 8 years old, Herol was introduced to boxing at the Radford Boys Boxing Club by a lieutenant in the Royal Navy called Terry Miles. He took to it like a duck to water, mimicking Muhammad Ali's mesmerising movement. Before turning 17, he had already had 80 amateur fights and was yet to lose. His love of boxing would eventually take him up to St Thomas's gym in Sheffield. It was here that the course of British boxing history would change.
Sterling qualities he's shown in masterminding the rise of Britain's exciting new hope, Herol Bomber Graham. That was Bomber pursuing his prey Leonard Chinza, and that last punch won him the European light middleweight title in the second round.
Although Herol played a pivotal role in fashioning the newly emerging Engle style, Irish trainer Brendan Engle would be key in implementing it. Under his tutelage, Prince Nassim, Johnny Nelson, Junior Witter and Kell Brook made major strides on the world stage.
You say, you've always got to keep your hands up. I says, well, really? I says, the great fighters in the 20s and the 30s, they were very, very loose, they were very, very agile, and but they box either orthodox or southpaw. I started teaching orthodox, southpaw, switch, stand square on, or box from the side. This was 5 different ways.
See, this approach allowed Herol to showcase his defensive prowess, slipping and sliding while setting traps for opponents from his predominantly southpaw stance. In 1978, Graham won the ABA Middleweight Championship, defeating Delroy Park with ease. He then took to the pro ranks convincingly, cruising to a 16-0 record by the turn of 1981. In his autobiography, Herol notes that he knew when fighters spent more time in the gym, whacking punching bags than doing road work, he'd keep moving, nabbing points here and there, whilst the opponents became knackered. After a convincing victory against the highly rated McCallum in November 1986, Herol was simply flying. He held the British, European and Commonwealth light middleweight titles and dreamed of securing a world middleweight crown, especially off the legend Marvin Hagler. Only some months prior, Herol had travelled to America, having been recruited as one of Roberto Duran's sparring partners. Yet he was swiftly sacked for making the legend swing wildly and miss in front of his entire entourage and journalists. Herol had then proceeded to quickly dispose of Ernie Rabot in the first round. After stopping America's Charles Boston in the 7th round in January 1987, Graham's record stood at 38-0. He then decided to split with Brendan Engle, instead choosing Barney Eastwood as his manager as he felt he could open new doors for him. The problem was, Barney brought in the Panamanian Federico Plummer to be Herol's new trainer. The relationship was instantly tense, especially after Plummer gave an interview with the Sun newspaper saying, "Graham is a good boxer, but makes basic mistakes, particularly when he moves back with his head high in the air." This would be a chilling foreshadow. With the new trainer's pressure to conform to a more traditional hands-up style, and Herol simply missing Brendan's calming influence, he would lose his European title to Sambu Kalambe in May 1987. The potential world title shot was now gone. Perhaps the change had been costly. He'd lick his wounds, returning to the ring and defeating Ricky Stackhouse, James Cook, and Johnny Melfer. Importantly, Brendan Engle was back in his corner, but there was still drama yet to come. Marvin Hagler would be stripped of his WBA title after choosing to fight Sugar Ray Leonard in April 1987, instead of the WBA mandatory challenger, Herol Graham. The reasons behind Hagler's decision have been debated extensively.
The Bomber reigned as British champion for a decade, but even Marvin Hagler chose to vacate a title rather than face him.
It seemed like I was too much of danger. Not in the sense like a big puncher, but I was crafty.
He could beat Hagler. That is my opinion. And he had the ability, and he should have gone right to the top and stayed world champion for a long time.
Ranging from a belief that Hagler sought more money for less risk, to the American not wanting to fight a slick defensive boxer due to a lack of entertainment value. I personally feel it was a combination of Herol lacking much selling power, while Hagler simply didn't want to chance fighting such an awkward contender. Regardless, at almost 33 with his powers waning, it's argued that Graham would have given him a tough fight. Who knows really? Graham would finally get his shot at the vacant WBA title, being scheduled to fight the tough Mike McCallum at the Royal Albert Hall in May 1989. Tall, quick, and a body shot man, the Jamaican McCallum had reigned as a world champion at light middleweight for 3 years, so Herol knew how hard the fight would be. Winning the initial rounds, Bomber was flying, dodging and weaving with ease, but the third saw a vicious assault from McCallum, forcing the Brit to keep his hands up. Herol began landing jabs consistently, yet McCallum also found some scoring punches. The bitterly close contest would see Herol suffer a narrow split decision loss, with a point he had been deducted in the 8th sealing his fate. Never a quitter, Herol would redeem himself with swift wins against Rod Douglas and Ishmael Negron, setting up a tantalising tie for the vacant WBC World Middle title with perhaps the hardest pound-for-pound hitter ever, Julian the Hawk Jackson.
Now, Julian Jackson was a guy like that, where his KOs were so crazy. Like, you hit guys and they would just go, like, while they're standing up, to just stiffen up and fall flat backwards.
A terrifying proposition, boasting a 40-1 record, yet Graham initially rose to the challenge, outboxing the Virgin Islands man and inflicting serious damage on Jackson's eyes in the second. With the doctors on the verge of pulling Jackson from the fight, Herol knew his time was now. He would be world champion. But then, in the 4th, disaster struck.
As it is, but falling ever further behind them. Oh no! That's what we...
The Brit was rendered unconscious for 5 whole minutes, and understandably, when he awoke, he was distraught. At the same time, Nigel Benn and Eubank Sr fought a brutal war, drawing the headlines and capturing public imagination. Tragically, as Ben Deers notes, these two boxers weren't even the best middleweights in Britain at the time. Michael Watson and Herol Graham were. Yet Herol would be cruelly frozen out of the picture.
But Herol Graham was on the outside? Why?
Well, he was too good for his own good, really. I mean, he wasn't a man you could hit, and so if you had any type of reason or intellect at all, you'd say, well, why would I fight you? Why would you fight somebody you can't hit?
See, a few years prior, Herol had sparred Eubank at the Engle gym, leading to friction.
And nearer home, Eubank didn't want to know after a frustrating gym session.
He hated it. He hated me. He hated me. He loathed me. He hated me. He hated me. And then so he says, Herol, there's one thing that I will tell you. I will never ever box you. Ever. Never. Ever box you.
Meanwhile, Nigel Benn adopted a similar attitude when confronted by the skillful Slickster, allegedly saying, "Who needs him?" suggesting he didn't want to be embroiled in a messy affair.
Yeah, Nigel Benn knows full well that if I boxed him, I'd have done the same with him that I did with Chris Eubank.
With Graham lacking the star power to sell across the Atlantic, and with the only other top contender, Michael Watson, bowing out of the sport in September 1991, Graham's options were simply limited. His freakish elusive abilities had ultimately harmed his career. Sadly, after a further loss to Sambu Kalambe in Italy and Frank Grant bout in Leeds, he walked away from the sport in September 1992. But that was not the end. At just 33, Graham knew he had more to give.
You spent 4 years out of the ring. What made you make it come back?
Well, I was missing the sport. I missed it, and I knew that I had something left to offer.
But an uninspiring win against the American Terry Ford in November 1996 left many still worried. In fact, Brendan Engle questioned whether he should be returning at all. Herol persevered, beating Craig Joseph, Chris Johnson and Vinny Pazienza in fairly swift succession. Would he finally secure something which had so cruelly evaded him in the past, a world title? America's Charles Brewer held the IBF World Super Middleweight crown, but many were reluctant to fight him. His sledgehammer of a punch had many running scared. Yet, testament to Herol's confidence and spirit, he was more than willing to take on the challenge.
I know myself, I never would fight Herol Graham with any of my fighters coming up, and I had quite a few middleweights, junior middleweights, and welterweight champions. He was the one guy that I always was afraid of because of his boxing talent and his left-handed style. So I think probably many other managers felt the same as I did.
Maybe, just maybe, after years of being spurned and avoided, Herol would have his much-deserved prize. And in Atlantic City in March 1998, it was all going according to plan. Herol was bamboozling Brewer before a left found its way through to send the American onto the canvas. The Brit was making Brewer look silly, spinning him around and making him miss constantly. Brewer clung on for dear life, showing immense resilience, but Herol reigned supreme on the scorecards. He was within touching distance, but out of nowhere, disaster struck.
It just seems as if the heart has gone out of Brewer. He's not fighting back when Graham slots those punches in.
Ooh. Decent looking right hand though, and another one for Brewer, and another one. Oh, he's got Graham going here. Is this a breakthrough? He stopped it. Oh my goodness me. Terrible moments for Herol Graham, who seemed to be on his way, and it just took one flurry of punches in the 10th round, and once again a world title fight turns into a nightmare for Herol Graham.
Every time I watch this fight, I have this visceral sort of feeling that the Brit is gonna make it and get over the line, and then he doesn't, and it's just incredibly depressing. Graham had fallen short yet again, by the barest of margins. Some felt the stoppage was premature, and I'd have to personally agree, but Brewer had recovered to retain his title nonetheless. Unfortunately, not every story has a happy ending, and while Brewer left the fight on a stretcher, Herol stood in the ring unmarked, rueing the loss. Sadly, Herol turned to drink and attempted to even take his own life. Fortunately, his long-term partner Karen Neville saved him, keeping him on the right track. Fast forward to 2022, Herol gave an interview to England Boxing, looking both healthy and happy. I've got a real soft spot for the man, and I truly hope he's doing well and understands how many he's left inspired by his insane boxing ability and amazing charisma and persona. I made this video to shed light upon Herol Graham, perhaps Britain's most underrated fighter. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with friends and family, and if it does well, I'd certainly like to donate a proportion of the proceeds to the man himself. I just have to work out how to get in contact with him first, as it's not just in the ring that he's elusive. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please consider leaving a like and subscribing, it really does mean the most. I promise more content will be on its way soon, so keep an eye out for that. All the best. Cheers.